guys, welcome back to another episode of Andertons TV. I have my good friend and successful guitar player, educator, general all-round nice human being, entrepreneur, Bruce Dickinson here today.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Thank you.
No, not at all. And our paths crossed a long time ago, didn't they? Like 1990, 91?
91, something like that, because what happened was we'd moved, my band was a band called Little Angels, as you know, we'd moved down here just to be able to rehearse opposite Andertons on the National Trust land.
Yeah.
Didn't last very long because we got kicked off for being too noisy fairly quickly. But we used to come in the shop and buy strings and whatnot.
Yeah, we used to see each other nearly every day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Good times. Does it freak you out sometimes when you think that would be nearly 30 years ago now?
It does a bit, and I think those days for both of us actually kind of shaped the rest of our lives a little bit, because the album that we were making then was one that went on to be our biggest record, so it was number one back, I think that would be about 93 by the time it came out. And then I don't think either of us would be talking now had we not been doing that stuff back 30 years ago.
No, for sure. So look, I want to take you back further than that though, because obviously we can tell from your accent you're not from round these parts, are you?
No.
So tell us a little bit about growing up and what it was that first attracted you to the guitar.
Well, it started quite young, about 14 for me. I just started to get obsessed with the guitar. I'm not quite sure why. And then we formed a band at sixth form college, and A-levels went out the window completely at that point, and I got quite obsessive about playing guitar. But back then there was, where did you go to actually learn how to play for a start? That was really difficult. So I used to scratch around looking for guitar players, sort of exhausting everybody in the local area, just getting all the licks off them and all that kind of stuff. But then there was this big problem, and I think this is still the case today. You're in a small town and you know the music business is somewhere else. Yeah. But where is it and how do you get into it?
It's Scarborough, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so the whole Little Angels were from Scarborough, were they?
That's right, yeah. So we just dealt with it it was the DIY ethic even then, even when we were 16, 17. Yeah. My brother would be 16, I'd be just 18 by this point. Yeah. And we were making our own records. We heard this bloke had a lot of money. Right. So we knocked on his door and with this scrap of paper, which was our idea of a business plan. And we thought it was entirely reasonable that he should give us £1,000 to press up our first record, which is a 12-inch EP. So very sportingly, he actually wrote us a cheque. We'd never met him before. And we came out of that thinking that was just what you did, So
was this Kev, or are you talking about someone back in Scarborough? No, this is just some bloke
in a village with a big house.
Right.
So we needed some money to make a record, and we thought, well, he's got money. How hard can it be? And we just came out with a cheque. So stuff like that used to happen. It was this sort of sense of self-belief, and we basically, failed our A-levels and bought a transit van. And we thought, well, the music industry's not going to come to us, so we're going to go and get it, kind of thing. Yeah. But our idea of it was like gigs in Wales, in rock clubs and stuff like that. But we got a break. The magazine Metal Hammer still is an important magazine, and they liked our demo and they put us on with Tesla at the Marquee. Right. Off the back of our demo. And then the following week, Guns N' Roses were coming over. So we got that gig as well. And back then it wasn't that big a deal that we opening for Guns N' Roses in the Marquee, but of course now it's
huge, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they did 2 shows. We did the second show. Right. And from that we became like the house band at the Marquee through the late 80s, sort of 1988, and we supported all the bands that came through, and then ended up headlining ourselves, licensing the record to an indie label, and then on to Polydor.
That's fascinating. So Little Angels was your first band?
Yeah. You
and your brother and everyone else was just at the same college, were they?
Yeah, we had a bit like the Spinal Tap thing, we had a few exploding drummers along the way, but essentially it was the same band. And still is, really. I mean, Mark Richardson is the drummer in Little Angels, the more recent lineup. I say recent, 1989.
Yeah, it's not that
1991. Sadly, Mike Lee, who played in the band during a lot of the records, the formative times, he's no longer with us. And Mike went on to have an incredible career with The Cult and then ended up playing drums for Plant and Page. Right. And a lot of the guys in Little Angels have gone on to do these incredibly interesting things, and the one sadness is that Mike's not around. That was that's the thing that most of the time we're looking back with these kind of very, very fond memories, but it's a little bit sad about that.
No, that is a shame. So I mean, amazing that you. I mean, it is unusual for the first band to go to have any sort of success, let alone the sort of level of success that you had.
But I think that some of the flaws were part of its charm. It was all about getting out of a small town.
Right.
All our Little Angels records were about that, getting out of a small town. And it turns out there's lots of people all around England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland who want to get out of a small town. So we spoke for a certain group of people, I think.
Yeah.
And it might have been the people who are a little bit suppressed and a little bit square and kind of knowing that they feel a bit contained. And I think that's the job of a band, is not just to sound good, it's to speak for people.
Right. But I mean, musically, it was a classic rock band. Do you think that the timing was good as well?
It was amazing, the timing, because we loved AC/DC, but we also loved Reckless by Bryan Adams. That was and Rumours by Fleetwood Mac and Elton John. So we were definitely at the more commercial end of things, just by our taste.
Yeah.
We didn't think it through. We just liked what we liked. So that put us in a certain bracket, and then everything changed when Bon Jovi released Slippery When Wet, became the biggest band in the world. And of course we were like a young, daft version of that. It was like a kind of Monkees version of Bon Jovi, So we were the right thing at the right time, but also perhaps a little bit late as well, because what killed our career, Stone Dead. Yeah. It went like this for a while. We ended up with the #1 album just after I'd met you, 1993, and we were touring with Bon Jovi actually, and we'd done Van Halen, ZZ Top, all these huge tours, Aerosmith, and we ended up on the private jet drinking champagne with Richie Sambora, with this #1 album.
I know,
yeah. But then out comes Nevermind, and suddenly it was like punk. It just wiped the music industry clean, and you couldn't do a guitar solo for 10 years. You certainly couldn't have long hair, and little kids used to like point and laugh and go 80s metaler as you were walking down the street. So it was just everything changed,
I remember that now. I remember that because when we first met each other and we would talk about stuff, it did feel like if it had been 5 years before, you'd have all been multimillionaires and it wouldn't have mattered. But it just kind of was about to happen, and then the industry
Europe,
just went.
Yeah, you could feel it. We were on tour with Van Halen. You could feel everything changing almost under your feet.
Yeah.
And we had a record that was doing really well on MTV, but you could feel it was just a little bit late. But but what I've learned over the years is that stuff doesn't really matter. What does matter is negotiating your way through.
Yeah.
And us still playing guitar now and having a long-term life in music.
Yeah.
Record deals come and go. You may have a hit record, if whatever that means these days. Yeah, you may have a big record, but doesn't mean your life's sorted out forever.
And I do remember that, as you say, this sort of implosion.
Yeah.
Relatively quickly, wasn't it? Did you?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember back to the conversations there. Then America didn't pan out well for you, did it?
It didn't for anybody really.
Right.
I mean, I think there was bands like Bush who kind of made it work. But the trouble with the States is, people always say if you play guitar, there'll be people watching this, his parents will be saying to some of their uncles, "Oh, you'd be great. You'd go down really well in America." Well, they've kind of figured it out, and the problem with a UK band going to the States is it's so expensive because you've got to hire all your backline. You've got to have techs, you've got to have hotel rooms. So you'll do 20 or 30 grand a week, plus your legals and your green card and all that kind of stuff to get out there. So as well as that, if you don't have an American record deal, you've got to kind of fund it from this little island here. And it's not, the rock scene in particular is not big enough to fund it. So even back in the day when there was a lot of money in music, you could bankrupt yourself by and you could also go mad.
Yeah.
Because sitting in a bus and doing those long drives, it's
been
the death of any band.
Do you accept though that they were your decisions and that, or do you feel that was badly advised or badly? Do you even want to say on?
No, I'm quite happy to. It's really, I mean, that's the great thing about being 30 odd years.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's not 30 years, it's 20 odd years. But you can talk about this stuff with a lot of hindsight, and a lot of the stuff that we've learned is still a little bit relevant now, actually. Yeah. So you've got to be real cautious about the States. If I look back, I think the band did absolutely. There's always limiting things in the band, and I think I've got nothing but kind of good vibes about that band. Everything that's good in my life and all my friends and everything came from that era. Could we have had a bigger career? Yes. Could we have had a worse career? Yes. You know, and it set us all up for having a lifetime in music. So, you know, and the other thing about Little Angels is we got it back together in 2012, and this miracle happened that the audience was still there. So I thought it'd been completely forgotten about, and everyone, almost to a man, woman and child, came out, and it was like 20 years hadn't happened.
So how did that feel? What was the moment when you just sort of went, I don't think Little Angels is going to carry on, and I'm going to have to try and do something else with my life?
Well, we did the Albert Hall, and it was full, and that was great, and we knew we weren't going to top that. Yeah. So we all just got together and said, you know, Toby needed to go and make a solo record. I needed to go and make a different type of record, and had a band called Blow on an indie label. And I think I got a lot of my playing sort of sorted out during that very free Grateful Dead kind of period. And I had this strange thing that happened then where Blow started getting really good reviews, which Little Angel didn't because it was poppy.
Right.
Blow was kind of cooler, but we didn't sell any records.
That's not uncommon though, is it? You get the critical acclaim, but no commercial success. And
I like the commercial. You know, I like rock and roll being in big spaces. You know, and you know, there is something epic about playing a gig where you're on a big screen and there's thousands and thousands of people. But equally, there's something great about a tight little pub gig where everyone's playing great. You know. So, you know, I don't think there was any big boo-hooing at the time. It was just like, okay, we're survivors, you know, but it was tough. To go from a record deal and a wage, and we never really accrued any money in the band. We would do the classic thing, you'd come and see us at Hammersmith maybe, we'd have massive lighting rig, we'd have a catering crew, we'd have 3 trucks, not like these days when everyone's touring in an estate car. We had 3 trucks, you know, 20 crew to play Hammersmith level. So at the end of all that #1 album, everything, all we had was a tax bill, so that was a little bit, you know, and it is a bump because no one trains you for this. If you've been in a band and it's gone well, there's no training. It must be the same in professional sport.
Yep.
You know, when you have an injury or something, no one's really talked about what you do if it's suddenly, and the switch is like that. And back then, if you were outside the music business, you couldn't get back in. You couldn't even record because studios were so expensive. And it was like you'd been in a party and then someone just booted you out, and you could see in through the window everyone else having a good time, but you were out the club. You know.
I never realised it felt that. I never realised it would have that sort of impact on you. But
it's not like today. Where, I mean, today the music business belongs to all of us. You know, it belongs to me and you as much as it belongs to Metallica or Beyonce or Lady Gaga or anything, because we can reach our audience. There isn't any gatekeepers, and those gatekeepers that set themselves up like Simon Cowell. It's a self-appointed role, you know. We don't need it. It's great if you want to do the TV show thing, but we don't need it because we've all got YouTube and Facebook and Instagram.
So what was
but back then, no.
Yeah, that's a great point. So where was the? I mean, for people that I guess this moves us nicely onto where probably Bruce and I got to know each other even better. Was you? What was happening in Guildford at the time was that a local college had just started, which at the time was very small and embryonic, but you know, as some of you may know, it's called the ACM, Academy of Contemporary Music, and I'm pretty sure at the time it was just one guy. It was a guy called Phil Brooks who it was his
and it was your
idea.
Dad.
Yeah, well, my dad had helped Phil understand how to run it perhaps a bit more commercially, but he wasn't doing the teaching, and then you became like, you know, person number 2. Yeah,
looking back, I mean, Pete Anderton was really important to the setting up of the college. It was set up in the old Andertons building.
Yep.
So it had a real vibe to it, and my contribution, I mean, it was a lifeline to me because I often talk, you know, in the education thing about musicians and their transferable skills, and everybody's got this career where it's like a pie chart, and you've got to have these income streams. And these days, and back then, it's too tough just to rely on that to pay your bills, you know. It will do some months and some years, and other years you'd be like, well, how am I going to eat? And you need these transferable skills. And mine turned out to be education. I just had a feel for it. I just knew what needed to happen, and my contribution was, there was this building, there was this great college, and I just wanted to make the courses a little bit more rock and roll and a little bit less conservatoire. A little bit less about the craft and the scales and more about the art and the songwriting, and taking seriously not just Frank Zappa and Steve Vai, but also looking at the Ramones and, you know, the Kurt Cobains, and trying to understand not just the cultural context, but also the actual musical side, because these 3-chord records are not easy to make. So it's simple done well was the ethos.
Do you must take some satisfaction then in the sort of the seismic shift in education? Because I remember
it kicked off. Yeah,
it just went, and I do.
It was like being in the band again.
Yeah, but it's thanks to people like you having that view that the conservatoire style of education, you know, pass, fail, very traditional.
You have to do it like this.
Learn your scales, play old, you know, nursery rhymes if you want to get started. And you recognised that was never going to engage enough young people to want to play a musical instrument.
It wasn't only that, but if you did, I mean, I love Paul Gilbert. You know, I love his playing, but if you that style of guitar playing is quite easy to teach in that it lends itself to being dealt with sequentially and in a kind of you know, exercise.
So not easy to do,
way.
But you're saying that to structure the teaching,
exactly, not easy to do, absolutely not. And Paul, well, you know, Paul Gilbert, what he does is bring himself into it, and he epitomises that. But what you don't want to do is try and churn out lots of Paul Gilberts, because they just won't get work, you know. So, and increasingly over the years, we've realised that everybody's different. I mean, I'm a very primitive guitar player. I fly the flag for classic rock, and I make no apologies for it. But I'd never try and teach someone to play through a 50-watt plexi and do what I do, because it's just that's me, you know. But everybody else is their version of me. And quite early on, I got cured of any guitar competitiveness, because I was just hanging around these great players in Guildford. You know, if Guthrie walks in, you go, okay, great, I don't have to worry about doing that again. You know. And over the years, I've been much more comfortable with that idea that your limitations are part of your strengths in all kinds of ways, you know, and you develop your own style. And if we can help people do that and find their niche, that's the important thing.
Because whilst you were at ACM, it went from 30 students or something to 1,500, was it? Like, I mean,
and then I left to set up BIM.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, ACM wasn't my business, and I had some fairly robust views, and Phil, we definitely had a different opinion. Now Phil was very interested in the more pop orientated stuff. The TV shows were starting to come in. There was a lot of interest in that, and you know, it just wasn't my thing, because I felt with the TV show it wasn't about artist empowerment. It was about you getting this lucky break, in inverted commas, and being part of someone else's machine. My thing is always about being self-reliant and designing your own life, because I think rock and roll is that. Whether you're cutting grass for a living or playing a guitar, if you're living life on your own terms, that's what rock and roll is. So Lemmy's a rock and roller, you know, Steps not so much, you know. And it's nothing to do with the musical style, it's to do with the fact that that's in a cog in a machine. Lemmy's a cog in his own machine. He is the machine.
You know, I mean, looking back, it was fascinating for me. You know, I remember those early, you know, I was very young, very naive, with no real life experience. But I remember talking to my dad about this. This is even pre-meeting Phil Brooks, and all we really had an idea at that time was that we knew we'd sell, I don't know, 50 or 100 starter guitars at Christmas every year, and we knew that by March, like 95% of those young people that had given it a shot had given up. And we were very much on that sort of wavelength of like, really, you know, if you take a teenage kid and you put a book with row, row, row your boat, or green sleeves or something, whatever it is in front of them, and go, this is what we're going to teach you to play guitar. It's no surprise that 3 months later they drop out. And I know with you and Phil, and those early days of ACM was very exciting.
But nobody predicted what would happen. So BIM, when we went to Brighton to set up BIM, it just flew. And we made it more rock and roll and more art school, and it flew. And BIM's now the biggest education provider in the world for higher education. But it's a double-edged sword. It's like, again, it's lots of parallels in music. It's like your favourite bands, they start really garagey, like we did here, like we did, and then it becomes a little bit more corporate, and then it starts making money, and you know, and then it becomes another thing. And I lost control of BIM quite early on. It became this big thing, like being in a band that kicks off. You know, you sort of, can't control it, and it just became a lot of students. So
I don't know how you. I mean, that is a challenge in any. I mean, whether it's Andertons or Andertons has over 100 staff now, and it is different to when it had 6 staff.
Yeah.
And it's different because there are so many processes and things that have to be followed and embedded, so it loses some of that sort of
garagey rock.
Yeah, and just like spontaneity sometimes.
Yeah, you become very accountable to sort of red tape.
But I think that's the challenge for any growing business is to how do you try and retain what made you great in the first place, but still be much bigger.
Well, you've managed to do that. I don't think I'd sold my shares in 2012, and I'd done with it. I hadn't played guitar for 20 years, because I'd stopped playing because I couldn't you can't do everything. And I'm the sort of person I play guitar a lot or not at all,
Yeah.
So I'd gone for not at all for a lot of years.
But that's a personality trait of yours, whatever you do, isn't it?
Probably.
You're either doing something 100% or you don't want to do it at all.
That's it. So I just went fishing.
Yeah.
So I retired, sold up, qualified to be a charter skipper in a little bass boat.
Yep.
And again, like music, it's all about innovation. So we bought a small boat. We didn't buy the big boat that goes to the middle of the channel. We bought this small, agile boat and did it like an American-style sport fishing, and did middle-class fishing for bass.
Oh, you mean as in you were taking people out on the boat where you were in charge?
I was Captain Bruce.
Captain Bruce.
And I still run the boat, and 2 captains.
An official one and an unofficial one. It's all good.
Yeah. And but after a bit, I just kept looking over my shoulder at what was happening in music education, and then I tried an experiment to start a new band at 47 and see if you could still get a band away, and it worked. I made a record with a band called Colour of Noise.
Yep.
And I went with Pledge Music so I didn't bother with record deals. Did Pledge Music, played Download and some other festivals. Great record. And then a strange thing happened. We had a sort of minor hit on Planet Rock. Planet Rock's still hugely important station there for what we do. So it kept playing this track called Medicine Man, which was produced by Luke Potashnik who'd started Temperance Movement. So Luke had done this great job on the production. We recorded on rack, old school 2-inch tape. No editing, playing live, and it just stayed on the radio. And it was a real problem because I'd realised I'd made a fundamental mistake, which I'd set up a very old-fashioned type of band, which was too expensive. So as it got bigger, the costs increased faster than the income, and I'd worked out that if just following this line on the graph, if you wanted to take it up to Hammersmith Odeon, if you could get that far, or Shepherd's Bush Empire, say, you'd end up with bigger checks, more work and more losses. And then people would want you to go on tour, and that would cost you £5 or £6 a week.
How many other guitar players, I mean, I don't get the impression that there are many other bands out there that are as commercially aware as you are about the implications of what they're going to do, or am I naive? Do you think most
you'd be
bands
surprised.
now are pretty commercially?
I think the world's divided into different types of people. Like we're talking about size, the world's divided into large corporations and boutique, not much in the middle.
Yeah.
Education's like that, as well. Bands, I think the ones that are really doing it, if you look at a Royal Blood, or on a smaller level, someone like the Gravel Tones or the Pearl Hearts, a lot of people doing the White Stripes type thing because it just works. You can afford to tour and you'll make money.
And you think that that sort of Royal Blood and White Stripes kind of vibe, do you think right from day one someone's gone, you know what, if there's just 2 of us in the band, it's gonna we're not splitting we're only splitting stuff 2 ways, not 5 ways.
I don't think it's that kind of decision. I think people are forced into it because how can we actually go on the road? Well, you've got 5 or 6 people in it who are on sort of staff all the time, if you like. That band's there. It's a democracy. That's really tough. But let me ask a question: how many 4x12s do you sell?
Hardly any.
Yeah, how many 2x12s? A lot more.
Because
we all want them to go in the back of a splitter or a estate car.
Yeah.
So we're all thinking practically, and the bands that the other thing the bands do is tour digitally. They don't rush out on the road because it's so expensive. A support tour for a mid-level band that's got radio going on, it's going to cost you £5 or £6 a week to drag around the UK, even on travel lodges and shared rooms and stuff. So, we got offered some gigs with Gun abroad, and it would have been fantastic, but it's not. You can't justify writing off thousands of pounds a week. But what you can do is reach your audience online, grow it. So you're touring online, in effect, like you do,
Yeah.
like this. We're broadcasting now, so you do this sort of stuff, make great videos, and then you only go on the road when there's an audience to play to.
So, I mean, I think that's a fairly common acceptance now that the bands have shifted from, you know, the tours were loss-making to promote the record sales. That's the old model.
Yeah.
Now the records are loss-making or the general records and you know, digital activity is loss-making, so that when you do eventually tour, you've got big audience paying premium price to buy the tickets, the venue's sold out, and that's where the income comes from.
That's one aspect of it, and then the other thing that's kind of essential now, and all music colleges need to fess up to this, that everybody at nearly every level below, say, Ed Sheeran, has got other income streams. So I'll give you an example. I was chatting to a guitar player yesterday. He makes his own video content, and he does 2 days a week of content production.
Yeah.
And he'll do it for anybody. He charges $500 a day, editing, He's really good at it. And that 2 days of that gives him 20 or 30 grand a year that funds his creative. And I call it, I've coined an expression for it, it's so common, it's a 3+3 kind of thing, where you've got 3 days of just earn the money using you in music ideally, but if not, let's just get some cash in, and then do 3 days of creative stuff. And big bands do this now, you know.
Right.
And as you get through your career, you can link it all together. So with me, you know, education links into music, links into you know, online stuff, and I organise my life like that. But we're all individual. You organise your life slightly differently.
Yeah. I mean, Chappers, I think, is the best example of anybody that I know that has, you know, if you looked at his income pie chart, it's there's probably 15 segments.
You
know,
absolutely.
You know, and if they all do well, then obviously the pie chart gets much bigger. But I guess the reality is, at any given time, they won't. You know, there'll be a mix. You know, some of them.
There will, but you're right though. I mean, the issue is, what do you do if you're someone like Peter Green, or you know, a Syd Barrett, or somebody who's deeply sensitive and an amazing songwriter and got all the artistic stuff but lacks practical kind of skills? The answer to that is teamwork. People, often you see a duo where one person's got that and the other person's got all the artistic ability. Yeah. You know, because I'm not a complete songwriter. You know, one thing I've learned over the years is my limitations. I can write you half a song all day long. It'll have a great title, it'll have a great backing track and a few hooks. I can't finish it. Not to the level I want it to be. So I will always find people who write great songs, and I want to work with them.
What, in Little Angels, who were the songwriters? Was it you and Toby? Or?
Me, Jimmy and Toby, and then, and sometimes just all the band, you know. Toby would definitely do the top line and the lyrics. And Toby's just, again, Toby's 50, and he's just had a big record with this band Wayward Sons.
Oh, cool.
He's won loads of awards, and he's touring constantly. He's just finished Steel Panther, and now he's out with Saxon, and you know,
I didn't. You know, I know the band Wayward Sons. I didn't realise that was Toby's band.
Oh yeah.
I guess I just hear it on the radio. I don't see a lot of video of it, so I just didn't even realise it was his band.
It's an amazing thing. You can find
he's a great singer.
You can
really
find form.
Singer.
Yeah, he still can do it. You know, he can still reach those notes. And I think one thing that's always a worry as a creative is someone's going to take this away from you.
Right.
But no one can.
No, I suppose not. No. So. Okay, so we've loosely kind of gone through ACM, BIM, and fishing, and of course, you know, we started talking again 6 months ago, whenever it was, because you were making noises about getting back into education again, which you have done. So tell us, you know, what is because clearly I think there's some draw with you into education. It's clearly you're clearly passionate about it beyond just, you know, trying to make a living out of it. So what do you think that is? And then ultimately, your new venture, Water Bear. I think it's pretty clear from what you've told me about it so far that it's not trying to be just another ACM or another BIM. It's a different vibe again.
I think we've changed a lot of our thinking, you know, particularly about this individualised approach and the need to keep the thing small. It's not to say that ACM and BIM will be the perfect place for lots and lots of people. We just look after a certain type of very serious musician, and we deal with people like this.
Water Bear is a new college in the heart of Brighton, offering degree and master's programmes for musicians, creative artists and entrepreneurs. Waterbear believe your college work should fit around your life, so you can study online, on-site, or a mixture of the two. We run courses for producers, vocalists, musicians, filmmakers, social media content producers, songwriters, tour managers, and DJs. Your own music and projects form the foundations of your course. Waterbear will help you expand on what you already do to gain a high-level qualification. Our BA Honours and Masters programmes are validated by the University of Chichester. The college is different because we treat you as an individual, with an emphasis on one-to-one mentoring and small class sizes, all within a creative community of like-minded people. Waterbear is run by a team of top musicians and innovators who can help you get from where you are to where you want to be. So if you're passionate about music and want to find out more, call or email us now to book your personal consultation. We are Waterbear.
You know, and that's quite intense. For most 18-year-olds, it's probably a bit much, but for those that have really been out, what we need is people to be already doing stuff, and then we can grow it.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And the reason we set up Waterbear is I didn't really want to set up another college or another business per se. It's hard work, you know, but it just felt like there was a vacuum and somebody needed to do something a bit different. And also, when we wrote the courses for ACM and BIM, they were very much about being a specialist. And back in the late 90s, if you wanted to play drums, you had to really, really play drums. Same with guitar, same with singer-songwriting. These days, everybody's got to be an entrepreneur, everybody's got to be a content maker, everybody's got to understand business, everyone's got to record, mix, master themselves, and learn to play, and learn to write songs. So you've got a more general course. However, we've put in 25% of the degree, and nearly all the masters, is about what you do. So you major in, if you were a tour manager, you would major in tour managing. If you want to play guitar a certain way, maybe you major in slide guitar or whatever, but that's your bit. So that goes all the way through, and you do a big project. As you find your own life in music, it's shaped by that journey through the degree.
And what do you think you're based out of Brighton as a head office, but you think it's going to be a lot of distance learning, do you? Rather than
I think that these days everybody learns online. There's no artificial sort of dividing line. Everyone's an online, and some people will come into the college. So it's on-site, online, or a mixture of the two. Your degree needs to fit in with your life, not the other way around. Because musicians have heavy responsibilities. You've got to practice. This is what academics, I sometimes have to really bang the drum for make these points, is you've got to stop people writing essays all the time, because we've got to put 4 or 5 hours in if we're going to be a proper player a day. And then we've got to run a band. So you've got to build air around people. And also, with musicians, you've got to create an environment when people are not going nuts with stress and anxiety, because, you know, a career in the creative sector is something that is a little bit daunting. So you've got to psychologically prepare for it and get the right, you know, the right kind of support network around you, and just, you know, as the Eagle said, don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy.
So would it be fair to sort of say that places like ACM and BIM are for somebody that is in their late teens and is thinking about doing something that would help them have a career in music, and then Waterbear is for someone that's perhaps already having a career in music but just feels they need some extra education to enable them to
I think that's certainly true. Well, I mean, I think you should always go and see the other colleges, and I wouldn't speak for them, you know, because they do great work, and, you know, they could speak for themselves. I'm sure you'll be interviewing them here. But I think that's what you've said, where it applies to Waterbear is certainly true for master's students. But for an 18-year-old who wants to do a degree, they've got to have some stuff going on. They won't be realistically making a living out of it. You can't at 18 very easily. But you've got to have some stuff that we can see. Like, I want to see something on SoundCloud. I want to see a band that's got at least planted the flag on social media with a little bit of an audience that you're growing, and a little bit of get up and go and drive. That's all I want. You know, a bit of talent and a bit of a kind of can-do kind of attitude. And
what do you think the split is? You know, would you say? Do you think those types of Guitar Institute education centres where the sole purpose of going there is to just come out the other end a better guitar player. Do you think that's finished, or do you think that there'll always be
we're going to be doing a lot of that.
Right.
I'm big on guitar.
You want to get almost, you think maybe it's gone too far away, too far onto the business.
We just love playing guitar. Yeah. I mean, you know, again, you know, to split your mind business and creative is kind of a bit weird, because you've got to be really creative in business. A business plan is a demo as far as I'm concerned, and you know, your business, like your business, it's got a personality and it's got to have spirit and it's got to have a reason to exist. It's no different to your music. And at the end of the day, we're all sat here because we love guitar, and we recognise that if you're, you know, in your early 20s, you need to be playing all the time. Yeah. Because that's what we love, and we love pedals, and we geek around other amps, and you know, there's an element of, because it's me, Adam Bushell and Mark Claydon that set at Waterbear. Mark Claydon's in Pitch Shifter. He's got 20th anniversary of their big record this year. Adam Bushell plays in Freak Power. He's just come back from the Isle of Wight. We still have never lost that kind of, what pedal are you using? You know, what valves have you got in the back of there? So we want a college where we can do that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, I mean, I think that leads me nicely, because, you know, gear is why we're all here.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we'll put some links in the description below to where you can go and find out more about Waterbear, and if you're into the music, and it doesn't matter where you live in the world, does it? Just go and you can engage.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So. I mean, very much so. We've got a distance learning BA honours degree, starts in February. You know.
So I'll put a link in there, and you should go and check that out. But Bruce has very kindly bought some of his guitar collection in. There's a theme. Can you see the theme?
I don't just have Gibsons, actually. I did this slightly to support Gibson, because they're having a tough time, and I'm a lifelong user of Gibson, so I just sort of fly the flag today for that.
For sure. Well, look, so come on, tell us about, you know, when you were growing up, who was your favourite guitar player in the universe?
Well, Hendrix.
That well-known Gibson user.
Well, I think if you play Hendrix on a Les Paul, you end up with Slash, don't you? You know,
I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah, very much. You put Strat in his hands, and you've suddenly got a lot of Hendrixy stuff going on. But I'm in the British tradition of whacking the guitar, and I love dynamics like Peter Green, Jimmy Page, Gary Moore. I get into trouble because I call him a British blues player, and I'm talking about the musical style. A lot of people from Ireland get a bit political about that, so I'm not meaning, you know. But it's that style. It's what we do is we all love Billy Gibbons, but we'd never swing like that because it's a regional accent. And that Stevie Ray Vaughan junk, that's wicked. But you don't, if you come from Yorkshire, don't do that. So I'm like that kind of downstroke kind of, you know, kind of thing where you're sort of on the just behind the beat and all that kind of Clapton-y kind of thing. And I love that particular Les Paul plexi thing, and Lizzie epitomised it with Brian Robertson on that Live and Dangerous, and then the Black Rose album, which is 2 plexis, Scott Gorham playing at the best he's ever had been, because Gary Moore's suddenly in the band. So I'd urge everyone to go to the Black Rose album and just have another listen to it.
This guitar...
Yeah, this is one I've always had this.
Yeah, I think I definitely saw you in Angels with this, and I remember you having it at ACM, and I think I even remember you lending it to students at ACM.
I sold it.
On some. You sold it, did you?
Yeah, I sold it to. I got in this big.
Wasn't Chris Leonard, was it?
Yeah,
it was Chris Leonard you sold it to, was it?
And I sold it.
It
looked like this back then, so all the paint started flaking off. And I've got a mate who's an artist who just did that one night, and we left it and didn't think much of it. I've taken all the pots out, just have one.
I'm going to ask you about that in a minute.
Yeah. So this guitar, I was like, well, I'm not going to play again ever. Done with it. But I was teaching people, like a tennis coach. I was quite happy to be dealing with other guitar players, but I didn't want to. I know what I sound like, so I didn't feel the need to hear it, you know. So all my guitars were like lying about, and I'm like, well, this kid needs a decent guitar because he just got a gig on a TV show, being like the house band.
With my brother.
That's right. Yeah, we go.
Small world.
Yeah. So I said, Chris, do you want this guitar? And he said, I haven't got much money. And I sold it to him for 300 quid. And then his lovely mum rang me up and told me off for selling him an old guitar. So then Chris rang up. So I was like, man. And then I realised later, like often happens with guitars, they're all one-offs, and this has a particular thing. And it was gone, and I couldn't find anything that did the same thing as this. You know, it's got a maple neck. It's that late 70s kind of, you know, bits of maple, and it's got an aggressive kind of John Sykesy sort of thing,
right?
You know? So Chris rang up and said someone had offered him $6,000 for this guitar, and how about he sells it and we split it? And I said, dude, just sell it to me. And I bought it for not 6, but a lot more than I sold it to him.
Chris Leonard, you should be ashamed of yourself.
No, he didn't. No. He was really. He could have cashed in there, and he helped me out.
He's done all right for himself, hasn't he?
No, man, he helped me out. It was good.
Oh, that's fair enough. So
and he played in Busted with this as well.
Yeah.
So people kept ringing me up. He was in Son of Dork, which is an offshoot of Busted.
Yeah.
People kept ringing me up and said, "Why is your guitar doing all these pop gigs?" You know.
So it's well travelled. That I think I
is, yeah.
remember I see. There's some classic pictures of you when you were doing the support tour with Van Halen, I think, where that gets
there was a Strat as well, which was made out of bits, an ESP body and a JV series Telecaster neck, and a fingerboard put on it.
I do remember that.
And that guitar, in another big clear out, got given to Rooster, and that is in the hands of Luke Potashnik, who went on to form the Temperance Movement.
Was he in Rooster then, was he? Because they had that one absolutely brilliant hit, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they were all very, very young. I didn't realise that was hitting.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
My
it's a big family tree, isn't it?
My wife now, who was my girlfriend then, used to play that Rooster track all the time.
Well, it was a great record.
It was a good record.
And I went to see them, and I'm like, man, you could really do with this Strat, you know, have this Strat. But it's in good hands, and it's played on a lot of records, and I've actually had a replica of it made.
Oh, cool.
And in the process, I did figure it out. Having a guitar made, I figured out a lot of stuff about guitar.
Would that be your Desert Island guitar?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
and also, because I've grown up with it, I just know.
You just know everything.
When I hit it, I know what it's going to do, you know. And it's not, if I get a Les Paul with 4 knobs on it, I'm like, you know, which one's it, you know, or a 335, and it's like.
But I always remember you coming into this, because I'd known about this obsession with taking the knobs off. Actually, I just noticed you haven't done it on this one, but on the other, two, yeah.
That's an eBay guitar.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I remember you sort of going, it's just like everything else just gets in the way.
Yeah.
Didn't you have on one of them where the thing was taped over as well?
Yeah, I tend to wire, that one's wired in the Peter Green thing where it's, I say out of phase, I know it's technically not out of phase, but it's that kind of nasally thing, so that's slightly different.
Yeah.
More restrained mahogany neck kind of Peter Green thing.
I know. I just got this vague memory that you had a Les Paul where you'd just taken this out and it was just the bridge pickup or something wired into it. But I remember you coming in to try amps not that long ago, like within the last 5 years, and you'd literally you plug into an amp and you'd go, you know, we'd wind it up and you'd go, I don't like it. Plug me in the next one.
Yeah.
You'd just go, I don't like that one either. Plug me into the next one. And you know, we're all sort of going, he's a bit odd, this one, isn't it? It's just like, but that's your thing, isn't it? You know,
character. It's the character
like,
of the
what
sound.
does it do immediately?
Yeah.
Are you going to like the amp or not?
I can even now I can not sleep if something's not quite right. And I mean, I like the most direct link to that power stage of an old amp, like the Paul Kossoff thing. And I want to hear the harmonics as if you're bending a note. I want to hear that voxy kind of fifth above it or octaves things going on. You only get it from humping that back end of the amp. And if there's a effects loop in the way, it tends to inhibit. And I don't know what the technicalities of it is, but I just know if it's not quite right.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I'm glad you said about the Vox, because we'll talk about amps in a minute. But just tell us about the, you know, you got 3 other Les Pauls here.
That's just a fairly standard. I don't like finish, but I like the newer Les Pauls where they've got the thinner finish. What's it called?
The nitro finishes.
Yeah. I think the
or
the
VOS.
Glue,
you mean
the VOS thing? Yeah, and the glue's important. The posher Les Pauls have got a different type of glue.
The hide glue.
Glue.
I mean, I know there's again, if you read forums, there's all sorts of Mickey taking over, you know, realistically how much glue can make a difference. But
it does.
But I mean, all the builders that I've spoken to and you know, do say it is important. So that's so that you've not had very long, did you say? Even though you've got the fish engraved on it.
I've probably had that 10 years or so.
Oh, okay, quite a long time. And they're all 70s, or certainly these 3 are 70s Les Pauls, aren't they? I love this. This is real. Like reminds me of like Steve Jones, Sex Pistols kind of vibe.
Yeah, that's just an even. I think you can buy. We talk about this a lot. I think all guitars are individual. It's perfectly possible to buy a great new guitar. It's perfectly possible to spend a lot of money on a vintage guitar that's a dog. So I've got I can't be too precious because I've already bought that, devalued it by banging in bigger frets, and I'm going to take these out. So, you know, 70s are good guitars for me because you can chop them about without losing too much money.
Yeah, and they're not insanely expensive yet, are they?
No.
They're double neck.
That's a 1979
That's
SG
in
double neck.
fantastic condition for a guitar of that age.
Well, I think
It's
one of the
nearly
reasons
40
is
years
that
old.
they're not that practical. You know, for a start, there's the immense weight. I mean, all my guitars are pretty heavy, but you stick that round your neck, you're going to have back problems pretty quick.
Did you want this for a live thing, or was it just a fancy?
Bit of both, you know. But actually, the truth is, the 200 quid Dan Electro 12 string records better because, and it sits in the mix better. This is quite middly, you know, and actually you want prang, you know, with a 12 string, and it's a beast to play. But the surprise is what the 6 string sounds like because of all this monstrous body.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like an SG. It doesn't sound like a Les Paul. It's got its own thing going on.
The best sounds I ever heard from a double neck, and I've got a feeling it was Bernie Marsden's got an old double neck SG. And he was saying that what he used to do, the trick on his, was leave the volume of both guitars up, and then you'd get a drone. So as you played one guitar, the other strings would drone.
Would resonate. And also if you put them in an open tuning, or just root fifth.
And he was saying, listen to this, and he'd play, and you'd be like, that sounds amazing. He said, yes, it's what's happening is I'm playing the 6 string, but the 12 string's droning in all these
so he must have had it in the middle pickup position.
Yeah. Very, very cool.
I love stuff like that. I went to a studio the other day. There's a guy called Stuart Bruce who engineered. Oh, he was on loads of Trevor Horn stuff, and he actually engineered "Do They Know It's Christmas" and mixed it.
Okay.
So I was around his place, and he's got a guitar. And he's got, you know, fishing weights, the little shots.
Yeah.
He's got them on his guitar strings to produce a sound, and I'm like, who'd have thought of that? And it's got this real pinging kind of ethereal.
So whilst he's playing it, it's just got like little
bits of fishing weights.
Is it like that? You know, that you see cymbals where they've got like rivets drilled in that are loose, and you hit the cymbal and you get this like all the rivets rattle.
Yeah.
Is it that kind of?
Yeah. And he had some crazy open tuning going on, and I'm like, that's what I like.
That's awesome. I never wouldn't even. That's very cool. Now, we go back to the amp. No, actually, let's finish the guitar thing up. You know, you just mentioned you had Fenders and stuff like that. So, I mean, what would you say? I mean, you know, is the Les Paul is your go-to thing, but you know, you've got Strats for bits and bobs? Or?
I think the thing with guitar sound is the big thing for me, and it's about sounding good at the end of the day through the PA, or by the time your record's recorded, mixed, masters, compressed, on the radio, compressed more, still want the guitar to sound big. So there's no point trying to get that finished sound coming out your cabs.
Yeah.
So my sound is big and raw. It's like if you listen to Richie Blackmore, what you're hearing from the speaker is not what's coming out his cabs. It's bone dry and kind of, you know, huge and middly. So I'm looking for the guitar to resonate at about 800k or kind of thing, because I know that's the frequency that'll sit with the hi-hat and the bass drum, and I do the horn section, the keyboards. So I start with this, and also what I've learned is everything wood naturally wants to resonate at certain frequencies, and often the neck and the body are two different bits, and we've discovered that there's no formula we can work out, but sometimes they just work together and sometimes they don't. So sometimes swapping a neck, or, you know, we made about 4 or 5 Strats to get one we really, really liked. And then every little bit, the component of the nut, that's a bone nut. Actually, funny enough, for once I do like, this is a man-made kind of graphite thing, I prefer that. So all these things conduct the resonance into the guitar. The thing is, an electric guitar is an acoustic instrument if you play it in that traditional classic rock way. You want to get that wood shaking. And then I'll just take everything out that gets in the way of that, really.
I love it. I love it. Now, again, amps-wise, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you shifted from, when I first met you, you had this phenomenal wall of AC30s.
Yeah.
Did you have 6 or 8?
I had 6 to get 3 going at any one time.
And that was my favourite story. I mean, in fact, I think we probably used to see you most
getting them repaired.
Getting AC30s repaired.
But they were the notorious batch. It was the 30th anniversary ones.
Right.
And
but everything on full, just
everything about 2 o'clock.
And
and then I'd wump it with a treble booster type thing.
Yeah.
So actually, I've got it here. That was my version of a treble booster, which is an old 80s graphic.
Oh, wow.
So I'd
which is fundamentally all a treble booster, I guess, isn't it? It's just a bit more volume with a bit more treble.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a BSM treble booster in today, and they just allow you to fine tune where you want the guitar to be voiced.
Yeah.
But again, I just poke up that 800k sort of area. So you get the Brian May thing with the Vox. So that Vox.
And what was because you've gone more plexi for as long as I can remember now.
Well, it's just, I'm always trying to make an AC30 sound like a Marshall or a Marshall sound like an AC30. So,
right.
you know, that going in, putting up the 800k area on that into a plexi, trying to make it sound like an AC30. And then I realised fairly recently that what you've got is these lovely bell-like harmonics, the stuff that you hear on even a Coldplay record, that classic AC30 sound, and the Brian May thing is fantastic and I love it. But I really like the raw, the Boys Are Back in Town, back end of a plexi. So I thought, well, it's simple, just make the preamp section from an AC30 and glue it onto the power amp stage of a plexi. Yeah. So I went to Dennis Cornell.
Lovely Dennis.
And he made this amp called the Vintage Brown, which was based on that idea. So I'll use an AC30, the Vintage Brown, which is the hybrid, or Dennis's version of the plexi, or Marshall. I use Marshall reissues quite happily on the Little Angel stuff. But there is something magic about Dennis Cornell's plexi. And this is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I mean, I'm going to come back to a point you made about 5 minutes ago, which is the sound that you hear on the record. You know, you try buying an amplifier to make it sound like the sound you have on the record. Yeah. And that inspired, or maybe inspired is the wrong word, but it created a whole raft of guitar amps, you know, by sort of Marshall clone guitar amplifiers. Yeah. That did sound how the amp sounded on the record. So if you wanted to sound
like that,
so if you wanted to sound like Eddie Van Halen by literally just plugging into a guitar amplifier and not having a producer or the rest doing anything and at relatively low volumes, it was like, there it is. And I remember a lot of people sort of slightly unfairly saying, you know, how is it that these guys have managed to make like the sound that a Marshall that can't make? You know, almost like a criticism of Marshall.
You've got to think that the Marshalls are going through some Neve desk, or at least a strip, you know, and you know, if you get all those little, even the little Neve EQs, it adds that zzz to your sound, so you've got to give it somewhere to go.
But I'm guessing if you took the sound out of an amplifier that was already like the sound of the record and then recorded
you've got to work a lot harder.
You wouldn't get.
And you know, if you've lost those woody mid, you know, that's sound we've got on there. There's an awful. There's a lot of weight in it, and the reason for that is if it then goes in for a bit, it's all there to bring out, but you can't pull it out if it's not there.
I mean, I know when Martin Kidd from Victory has explained how he tried to do that amplifier, he said, you know, if you want it to be like an old Marshall, that very unforgiving, you've just got a, you know, big sound, you turn the master all the way up to 10, and then it effectively it's a non-master volume head, and you can do that. But it's like
got good ears, Martin, really good. I mean, we've just, I'm going to the Victory factory next week to buy and choose all the amps for the college.
Cool.
I've got total confidence in Martin's ears, and the amps are amazing. But this is the problem, is that my view for, it's a bit of a hard line, but if you can't play it bone dry with a lead into a plexi at full volume, you can't play it. And every note's like a fridge dropping on your head. But if you persevere, you know, first time you do it, you're like, what is this? Same with an AC30. But if you persevere, you'll get a strength in your fingers. If you put Jeff Beck in a plexi, it sounds like God's entered the room, you know. I think that sound is here.
Yeah,
you know, I'd be quite happy plugging any of these. I'll still sound like me, and you'll sound like you, and you know. But I want to sound more like, I want to have more of me, if that makes sense. You know,
that's super cool. And finally, then, I mean, you bought this enormous pedal board, and then you haven't actually got very many pedals on it. Well, the board is, the number of pedals on it isn't terribly enormous. But are you a relatively simple?
Well, I tried the gig rig type thing, and it's great sonically because I do like short lead into the amp, but I've just got a muscle memory problem in that I'm used to looking at the light on the pedal board on a tube scream or something going on off. So to leave the light on the tube scream and then switch another switch is like it doesn't come naturally. So I've gone back to basically very, very carefully chosen pedals. I always use a Crybaby. An interesting thing about there's a treble booster on. So that just gives me, that's like a preamp. That's a BSM in the style of Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash. So it's just a preamp. Often I use this old Boss octave. A super duper hard on. Or a tube screamer for a bit of weight, and then the wah. You'll notice the wah is it's very responsive,
yeah.
And I've got an awful lot of gain there, and that's not too noisy. You know? And even that wah, you're not going to lose it in the PA. I could have horns going. It's kind of
and that's just the bog standard Jim Dunlop wah, is it? You don't buy like a posh one, or?
Well, I've got a guy that will true bypass it and stuff. I fiddle with everything.
Right.
Every little patch lead, if I don't like the sound of it, I'll bin it. And I've got a tuner in there. I don't really. It's a bit. All pedals buffer a bit, don't they? I don't know what
the Boss ones do. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes that's good, and other times it's sort of affecting the clarity there. So I keep going back to one lead. And
I'm trying to remember that there's a new Boss pedal that they've done where there's no actual switch on it. So It's just designed to go, and I think it's completely true bypass through it.
Yeah, I like that.
And you just leave it on all the time, and it takes up like half the space on your board. And
these things, you've got to just use your ears.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about that little splitter box.
Oh, you've got one of those on your. Yeah.
I use that because it sounds good, and I've got a posher one, and it doesn't sound as good, But also, you see, about I want pedals too. There's a little flanger there. I want things to be fairly in your face, not too short.
Is that what is it a BF? What even is it?
It's an old Boss flanger.
Because I was going to say that's so, the colour is so different to what it is now. That looks like it's had like 20, 30 years of sun fade or something.
I don't know, but I think again, pedals are a bit like guitars. Actually, you get ones that sound good, and if they sound good, they are good. And one of the greatest octave pedals is the one that Pearl used to make.
The drum kit.
No, there was a Japanese pedal company that for a while, and it made all its pedals were rubbish, and it made one octave pedal, a gem, and you get them for 30 quid.
Amazing. I didn't realise you used the octave pedal, and you just use that to just make your guitar sound fatter, do you?
Yeah, I won't use it depending on the arrangement in the song, but it also it just takes that plexi thing and does something slightly more me with it. So it stops me being too Jimmy Page or too Brian Robertson, much as I'd like to be.
It's great. And then delay just straight in the front end of the amplifier, like you say. You're not an effects loop user, are you? None of the amps you've got.
So you get that kind of a very rare. I don't like reverb at all because this is a dry room, so this is good because you have to really work hard on your playing. It's not an easy room to play in dry,
right?
But that's good. So you wouldn't, if you brought a cello in here, you wouldn't stick nasty reverb on it. So if you're playing a larger gig, you've got all.
He's all laughing at me because I can't play amps that don't have reverb.
It's practice though. You just sort of decide to do it and put up with it for a month, and then it's like having sugar in your tea.
Right.
After a bit.
Maybe I should just try. Maybe I don't know. I suppose I'm. It's all down to the music that you grew up liking. I mean, and I think I just grew up liking a different.
But were you hearing room reverb or? If you take Richie Blackmore, a lot of those great sounds of room reverb.
I think that's where, although I think we're about 4 or 5 years age difference, and it's just changed from your favourite guys being more 70s based to mine being more 80s based.
That's what you grew up
and
with.
some of them are even the same guitar players, but it's just the albums that they wrote in the 70s versus the albums they wrote in the 80s.
Yeah, like Eddie. Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2 is this.
Yes,
very
whereas
similar,
by the time you're into 5150 and Jump and all that kind of stuff, it's a different vibe, isn't it? But I always look at I loved that. I think I grew up during a time where it was the last of the crazy studio albums. So like Peter Gabriel's So and Eric Clapton's Journeyman and even like, I don't know, like Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms, you know, where it
sounded great, sounding records.
Yeah, I mean, just well, you can tell the production's not not a raw sound at all. It's a very sort of polished, finished sound.
It is, but I think a lot of that's post the amp.
Sure.
Not flow, it'd be in some old Fender Tweed or something, you know, and I'll get corrected on that because I don't know what gear he is, but certainly Clapton's Journeyman sounds, they are a bit different, but they're still fundamentally great sounds.
They're great solos and all the phrasing's great.
And a lot of the reverbs and delays are after the outboard gear, you know.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, it's anyway. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. Well, look,
we do.
I think it's been an absolute pleasure having you in.
Thanks, mate. It's been good to catch up.
No, good to catch up. And there is, you know, you have found your place in education, because I think you've got such great things to say and people want to listen to you. I want to listen to you. I can see the two guys, you know, in the rest of the room want to listen to you, and I can see why people are drawn to you to come and learn. So good luck with Water Bear.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you.
And wherever else it goes, and good luck if you decide to do some more. You might do some more Colour of Noise stuff. Or?
I think Angels might do something. I'm talking to the lads, and it's about the planets aligning, and you know, maybe 2020 with the following wind and a bit of luck, we might do something.
Yeah, it's a great band, that one is, and everything is. You know, I think
all things must pass.
Yeah, but you know, don't go out gracefully. Go out disgracefully. You know, I think you know it's. But that, you know, great drummer, and Mark's such a great drummer, and on the other thing as well. I mean, you know, you're maybe there must be some sort of Dickinson kind of educating genes, because your brother's a
Jimmy runs
professor at some other college.
Baspar, you know, it's a great course there as well.
Crazy.
Yeah, funny how it goes.
Oh man, and who have we forgotten? We better say hello to the other Mark in the band, and to Toby as well, and then we've covered them all.
Yeah, good stuff.
It's all right. Look, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye. And we'll see you next time on Andertons TV. Actually, I wore my special T-shirt today because I knew we were doing something educational. Cool, man. There you go.
Is that right?
That's
brilliant. Thank you so much.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the Andertons Guitar YouTube channel. If you're a drummer or a keyboard player or interested in music technology, you might find one of our other channels interesting, and I'll put details of those in the description below. If you want to find out more about the products we've just featured, please click here. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt like this, please click here. If you want to watch another video on our guitar channel, click down here. And to subscribe to our guitar channel, click here. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.